Welcome, everybody. We're about to get started. The Association of American Medical Colleges is pleased to welcome you to today's webinar, Optimal Strategies for Your Residency Application with a focus on plastic surgery. We are recording and will make this archive available afterwards. We will email you once it is posted. We've muted all participant audio. If you need help, please send us a message. This presentation includes time for Q&A. You may submit a question at any time by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. To access the resources, including the slides, please click on the Handouts tab where you logged in today. We'll also post a link in the chat box momentarily. And now it's my pleasure to welcome Cynthia Hutchinson. Welcome.
Awesome, thank you. Welcome to the Specialty Spotlight webinar on plastic surgery. My name is Cynthia Hutchinson and I am Director of Engagement for Residency Programs here at the AAMC. To begin today's webinar, I wanted to take a moment to give a little background on how this series came together. Each year, we hear from applicants, advisors, and programs that there's tremendous value in having a shared space to talk about the unique aspects of applying to different specialties, especially those that are highly competitive or evolving quickly. To help meet that need, the AAMC launched the Specialty Spotlight series in partnership with specialty organizations, advisors, and program leaders. These webinars are designed to offer clear, specialty-specific guidance straight from the experts so applicants can approach the process feeling more confident and informed. We see ARIS as a connector in the residency ecosystem, and this series is one of the ways we help bridge perspectives between applicants, medical schools, and residency programs. Whether you're hearing about plastic surgery for the first time or are already on your way to applying, we hope today's session provides meaningful insight and support. We're thrilled to have you with us and excited to hear from today's speakers as they share their expertise on preparing for a career in plastic surgery. The recorded webinar includes a brief overview of the AAMC and updates pertinent to applicants for a given field. So for today, plastic surgery, and specifically integrated plastic surgery programs. After the AAMC and ARIS updates, I will pass it off to Dr. Amber Lease, Washington University Program Director, for the Program Director perspective. Following Dr. Lease will be Dr. Brett Phillips, Program Director at Duke University, who will be representing the Student Advisor perspective. We will conclude the webinar with a discussion session that begins with some questions we received at time of registration and then move on to questions asked during the webinar. The Q&A feature is open and we do have folks ready to answer your questions throughout the webinar. We likely won't be able to get to all the questions that have previously been posed or submitted today, but we are doing our best to answer as many as we can. We will also be providing helpful links and a copy of the slides used today along with the recorded webinar. Feel free to refer back to this material and visit the ACEPS page for medical students and applicants once this information is posted after the webinar. All right, I'd like to take a moment to introduce the AAMC. I'm sure you guys are familiar with us, but I want to share a little bit more about us before moving on to the My ARIS cycle. The AAMC is a nonprofit association created to lead and serve the academic medicine community since our founding in 1876. Our mission is to improve the health of people everywhere. That is why our association supports over 450,000 members of this community, from medical students to deans and DIOs. The AAMC, through the integration of ARIS and other partnership data, supports applicant journey through the transition to residency. It's not simply a transactional step, but rather part of an overall offering through the AAMC and others, and we're focused on strengthening the support to applicants, programs, institutions, and specialties. ARIS was built by and accountable to the whole community. These products are not built in isolation. All recent updates to My ARIS came from stakeholder input, feedback, and research, including 40+ working group meetings and inputs from thousands of people through surveys, one-on-one meetings, and focus groups. The same approach is used to develop the other services around ARIS, including the Dean's Workstation and Residency Explorer tool. I want to take a moment to highlight the Residency Explorer tool. It is co-sponsored by multiple national organizations involved in the transition to residency. The Residency Explorer tool empowers students to find programs that align with their needs and interests and assess their competitiveness. 71% of applicants use this tool in completing their MyAris application to compare programs based on program characteristics like educational offerings, benefits, and current resident class demographics. We'll drop the link to it in the chat. This tool continues to be highly utilized for comparing programs and assessing one's competitiveness while forming program lists for sending in applications. The AAMC's Admissions and Selection Research and Development team is innovating the tool based on community feedback. Speaking of, this summer, the tool is expanding based on your valuable feedback to include increased specialty coverage from 25 to 40 specialties, enhanced program-specific details, including application and match services used, interview format and eligibility requirements, the integration of Step 2 CK and Level 2 CE score ranges for applicants previously invited to interview, and expanded program position data. As part of our commitment to improve the recruitment process for all, the AAMC began exploring with specialty leaders how specialty-specific customizations can help students share their interest and commitment to a specialty so that programs can more efficiently select candidates for interview. From these collaborations have come many pilot studies over the last cycle, and this year we continue this effort with 3 important pilots within the plastic surgery integrated community. We'll review those now. First is program signal participation and what that means for plastic surgery integrated program applicants. During the 2026 ARIS cycle, applicants will have 20 program signals to use, which is more than past cycles. As a reminder, program signals are a way for applicants to show true interest at time of application. For this reason, the AAMC recommends signaling all programs for which you have true interest, including home programs and programs to which you've rotated for an away or audition rotation. One thing that has not changed from previous cycles is that once you submit your application with a signal, the signal cannot be taken back. It is permanent. So we recommend double checking program signal status after August 20th and before you begin to submit applications on September 3rd to assure each signal is used in a productive way. New this year is a pilot for program signal explanations. The program signal explanation is a very short, concise opportunity to help programs understand your specific interest in their program. It is limited to 300 characters, which is about 75 words. This program signal statement is engineered to allow personalized statements to each program you intend to signal at time of application. Each unique program you signal will only see the unique signal statement you craft specifically for them. This feature will open to applicants on June 27th. If you have a program signal saved to an integrated plastic surgery program, you will be prompted to complete a program signal explanation prior to submitting the application on or after September 3rd. As the statement is required, you will not be able to submit your application until a statement is entered into the box. Another new pilot feature in the 2026 MyAris application is 3 specialty-specific questions. These questions were created in collaboration with plastic surgery leadership and the AAMC's Admission and Selection Research and Development team in support of helping programs identify the right applicants for their programs and the right physicians to treat their patients. Unlike program signal explanations, the responses to these 3 specialty-specific questions are not unique to each program. All integrated plastic surgery programs will see the same responses to these 3 questions. If you're cross-applying to other specialties like general surgery, the other specialties programs will not see these questions or your responses. The responses to each of these questions are limited to 500 characters or about 100 words. These questions are featured in the 2026 MyAris application worksheet, which we will drop a link in the chat now. The worksheet is a great place to draft your responses before entering and saving them in your application. Note that responses to these 3 questions are also required. Thus, you will not be able to submit your applications until the questions are answered. Once an application is submitted, the responses will be locked in and cannot be changed afterwards. The final pilot we have worked with integrated plastic surgery leadership to create is a packaged pricing pilot for 2026. When applying to integrated plastic surgery programs, you will be prompted to select and prepay for a package A, B, or C. Each package caps the number of applications that can be submitted for that amount. Note that if you purchase package A or B, but decide to apply to more later, you can do so. You are not locked in forever to the originally purchased amount. My heiress will note the additional applications and prompt you to pay the difference from advancing to the next level package. So let's say I applied to 20 programs, but did not get as many interviews as I wanted, so I want to apply to more programs. I can go back into my heiress and choose to apply to more integrated plastic surgery programs. When I go to check out, I will be prompted to pay the difference between the previously purchased package and the new package in a separate transaction. If you've previously qualified for fee assistance, the discount relevant to the package selected will be automatically applied at checkout. For package A, that's a 60% discount on the total cost of the package. For package B and C, that's a 558 discount on the total cost. We are also aware that many individuals who apply to plastic surgery programs may also apply to other specialties as well. The cost of applications and fee assistance to other specialties will be calculated using the traditional AAMC model of $11 each for the first 30 applications and $30 each for subsequent applications, and the 60% fee assistance will, when applicable. The number of plastic surgery integrated program applications submitted are counted separately and do not count towards other specialty totals. All right, now let's put that together with all features and a timeline for the upcoming recruitment cycle. So on June 4th, yesterday actually, the 2026 AIR season officially began. On June 27th, the program signal explanation feature will open for applicants applying to plastic surgery. In June and August, Residency Explorer Tool data will update and refresh with all that great additional information that we previously mentioned. On August 20th, that's the last day programs can opt out of program signals. So if you're looking at a program signal status after this date, you can be assured the information is accurate for planning out your signal strategy. On September 3rd, you can begin submitting applications and associated signals to programs. So take that time between August 20th and September 3rd to double check signal status before submitting applications. On Friday, November 7th, that is when interview invites will be sent to applicants between the hours of 11 and 3. And it's a really great idea to visit the ACEP's website for more guidance on timing here. We'll also drop the link in the chat for that. And we all know what occurs after that. Lots of interviews and decisions being made, and we at the AAMC wish all the best of luck to everyone during this process. Last but not least, there is a wealth of resources available on the AAMC website. Feel free to snap a photo of these QR codes for reference later or to peruse our site anytime for more information. I will now pass off to Dr. Lees for the program director's perspective.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I'm just going to get remote control of this so that I can advance the slides. That'll give me 1 second as I gain control of this. All right. Oh yeah, too many clicks. There we go. I am delighted to be joined here today by Dr. Brett Phillips, who's a dear friend and another program director in plastic surgery. And so both of us are going to give you some perspectives about what we know about applicants into our specialty and try and help guide you along this process. In my position in this, I'm going to really cover the data about competitive applicants, and then Dr. Phillips will give you some strategies to maximize your success, and we'll talk about some of the answers, I'm sure, to some of the questions that are coming into the chat already, and then whatever we don't cover, we'll try and reach at the end. But I want to start out by saying that if I'm going to give you data, sometimes data can be really overwhelming, and I don't mean this data to be discouraging. If I wanted to be an Olympic sprinter and I can't run the 100-meter in a competitive time, 10 seconds or whatever, maybe it's taking me a minute to run that time. I need to know that about myself. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It doesn't mean that I'm a failure in life. It just means that I need to start looking at alternative things that I'm good at and find ways to align my goals with what I'm good at. And so hopefully when we look at this data, that gives us a chance to be really reflective about what is a good fit for us and how competitive we are in this space. Oh gosh, I was like, it is a little bit laggy. Sorry, I'm going to keep advancing too many slides. So first, I want to give you some good news. The number of integrated positions has been increasing each year. In 1983, there were only 3 spots. That was the year things effectively started. In 2018, there were 168 spots, and this past year, there were 213. And so this number is continually going up. Programs are slowly expanding. The unfortunate hard news, as I try and get this to go forward, is that all of these spots fill. And they are a very, very, I would say this, the brass tacks of this is that these are very desirable spots. There were no plastic surgery spots in the SOAP last year, and most of the positions were filled by first-time applicants graduating from U.S. medical schools. Sorry, there we go. And the thing is, what we've seen historically is that these spots always fill. There has not, in fact, been an open SOAP spot in plastic surgery since 2018. And so we can look at all that data together and we can say that, yes, plastic surgery is, in fact, if not the most competitive specialty, at least one of the most competitive specialties in a match. And so now what I want to do is drill down into the data. And again, not meant to be scary or discouraging, but rather to equip you with tools and information that you need to prepare a good application, to have a good backup plan and a good roadmap for the future. And this data empowers us. We want you to match, and this is how we're going to start figuring out how to do that for each and every one of you as soon as the computer goes forward. So what we're looking at when we think about competitive, in this last cycle, I remember talking about 213 positions roughly for this last cycle. The program that I was at that time received 377 applicants. And so when a program is faced with that number of applications for their spots, there are a significant number of those applications that are going to be rejected immediately based on first round screening tools. About 1/3 of the candidates' applications will not even be read by a program. And so in the face of that demand, what that actually means is that programs do not really need to rank that many candidates to successfully fill all of their spots. And this data was last drawn from Charting Outcomes in the Match, which is one of the tools available to us through ERAS. Since we had transitioned away from this platform for a while, you'll see that there's a little bit of gap in some of the data that's available to us, but you can see that historically this trend has really held over the last couple of years that we had data collected. And so when we think about the applicants that didn't match, we can see that almost 1/4 of them were US graduates who had not ranked any other specialty. That means these are people who did not have a backup plan. And about half of the DO applicants who applied and did not rank any other specialty, clicking, it's going to happen eventually, there we go, also did not match. And so the overall match rate into plastic surgery each year for first-time applicants is about 64%. So that's kind of the number that we're looking at. What we look at for students who come from international graduates or international medical schools, regardless of citizenship, so US citizens that maybe traveled out of the country to a different medical school, we'll see that the match rates for these groups also are incredibly low over the past several years. And the same type of trend also holds for students who graduate from DO programs. And DO match rates into competitive specialties were poor prior to the GME unification, and they continue to remain very low after unification. I apologize, just a lag in the button clicking here. So let's think about who actually matches. When we take all of this information together, we get a picture of who plastic surgery residents are. This was the study that looked at the makeup of residents in the 2019-2020 academic year. They stratified the residency program by doximity ranking, which is an imperfect but way of looking at top tier versus middle tier and lower tier programs. And they found that a significant portion of the residents had attended medical school where they matched, and an even greater percentage came from a top 10 ranked medical school. DO representation was consistently low, and it was low in the top 3 quartiles based on doximity. And then in the bottom quartile, we see a higher representation of DO students and international medical graduate students. And I promise this will pop up any minute. There we go. There's a lot of data out there and a lot of literature that's been published if anyone is curious about doing some digging in these things. And you'll see that we reference a lot of articles in this talk. So let's talk about how to match successfully. All right, so let's think about what factors are important. We've talked to you about, some of your background may be important in here. And although the match data does show that applicants with successful matches tend to have higher research productivity, and we'll talk about that research. This was a survey of plastic surgery program directors, and it indicated that the things that were most important to the program directors were letters of recommendation, applicant familiarity or personal prior knowledge, and the Step 2 CK score. These were the three most important factors for program directors when thinking about who they wanted to take into their program. And so you can imagine how someone coming from an international medical school will have a hard time becoming a known entity to a plastic surgery program or getting letters of recommendation from US academic plastic surgeons. And so some of these things may actually be the drivers of the disparity that we see in some of that prior data. So let's talk about applicant familiarity. This is what you get through having a home program, through doing away rotations in plastic surgery, or doing things like research fellowships. So to underscore this point, the composition of the top 10 positions for the 2018-2019 rank list for the top quartile plastic surgery programs was investigated. And for integrated plastic surgery programs, the majority of the ranked to match students on the rank list were either home students or away rotators at that program, resulting in classes of residents with significant percentage of away rotators students. So what you can extrapolate from this is that performing well on an away rotation confers a significant benefit when we think about your competitiveness in the match. And how you do well on or what makes an away rotation successful is, something that people often ask questions about. And this was, again, a survey-based study looking at residents and program directors, asking them what they thought the most important things were for students on away rotations. And what they felt was that the most important thing for those students was to find a good fit for the program. That's what they're looking for. They want to find people that fit in well with their team. And so when you rotate with people and you work on your away rotations, you want to be trying to establish, is this a group of people that I actually have shared values with, that I enjoy spending time with? Do they enjoy spending time with me? Those are the things that are actually going to be very helpful for you on an away rotation. The way that you kind of establish that is by interacting with the residents. Again, this is from the same study, and for interacting with the faculty. It's not necessarily about seeing consults or participating in clinics or the OR. It's really about your interactions with the team. That's how we're assessing you on these rotations. And it's something to be very mindful of because it's about these interpersonal interactions. So if you don't have a home plastic surgery program, like half of all medical schools, the away rotation or these research fellowships is going to be a really important way for you to establish yourself as a known entity or becoming a known quantity to these programs. This was a survey study that specifically asked students who had come from no home program schools about their path, and all of them replied that they believed that they would have not matched if they had not done an away rotation or research fellowship at the program in which they matched. So my soapbox for this is that if you are disadvantaged in some way, like a no home program student, this is the time where you might want to consider a research fellowship, because really what that is a way of becoming known to the program. It is to gain mentorship and sponsorship, not because you need to have more publications to successfully match into plastic surgery. But that is going to lead us into the next topic, which is research. And we are going to look at the data for what it means to match into plastic surgery. And again, I'm going to get back on my soapbox. Nobody wants this thing that's happening. There's no reason to have 28 line items on your CV, which are probably mostly junk research, if we're being honest, not really advancing the science of our specialty. And we do need to stop this madness, but we are seeing this escalating trend in the number of publications for people applying into plastic surgery. And I think that this really has to do with people doing research fellowships and that research fellowship conferring an advantage because you become known to people in plastic surgery. But here is the other unintended consequence of that, is that we're seeing this escalated arms race in research publications, which will eventually advance. All right, so there is a really lovely study that came out recently, which is the law of diminishing returns in the plastic surgery match. And I think that this is a useful one to be aware of because it does help you at least start to set some upper limit parameters on information. And what they were able to show is that when it comes to matching in publications, if you have less than 5 publications on your CV, you have a 26% decreased probability of matching compared with the national average of 65%. If you have 16 to 20 publications, you have a 14% increased probability of matching. And there was no significant advantage once you had more than 15 publications. And so at the very least, if you were thinking about this from a very strictly data-driven perspective, you do not have to be trying to get 15 publications on your CV, there's no advantage after a certain point because it just starts to become moot. Similarly, we see the same type of trend when it comes to research experiences, and this may include, listing lab experiences where you don't have publications or abstracts or other things like that. Less than 3 research experiences does seem to be associated with a lower probability of matching, about a 13% decreased probability of matching, and there was no significant increase in the probability of matching once more than 5 research experiences was obtained. We also need to talk about research quality. So as I mentioned, in this climate of the research arms race, we are seeing a lot of very poor quality research being put out just to inflate CVs. But there is value in good research that advances the field. So this was a study that demonstrated that students matching at highly ranked programs tended to have higher H indices than those matching at other programs. And the analysis also found that applicants who matched at programs in the West also had significantly higher H indices than applicants who matched in the South. And so the H index, if you're not aware of what that is something that aims to quantify the cumulative impact and relevance of an individual scientific work. So higher quality work is valuable, but just having significant numbers is not the maximal benefit. And then let's look at letters of recommendation. So there are some tough factors when it comes to getting letters of recommendation, including bias in the letter writing, whether that's gender or race of the person who's writing your letter. We do know that male letter writers tend to score male students higher in several categories, including overall conscientiousness, self-initiative, and academic performance. That female writers will score female students higher in some other categories like overall and communication. And underrepresented students tend to score lower in a significant number of categories, most often team player. And these are just things to be aware of as you think about who is going to write your letter and how well they know you, and really making sure that you are considerate of the biases that that person might be bringing to the table. The other thing to think about is who writes or thinking about when you're asking for someone to write your letter. A lot of students feel like they need to have a letter from the chair rather than from other faculty. And this was a study that looked at chair letters, and often these indicated that they did not have significant contact with the student. And so that means the value of that letter becomes less to the people that are reading it. And so what's important in this situation is that if you can get a strong letter from a more junior faculty, someone that knows you better, that is much better than a less authentic letter or a less meaningful letter from someone with a higher academic rank. And then USMLE Step 2, that was one of the other things that we saw was important in that program director survey. And again, going back to this study, which is the law of diminishing returns in the integrated match, since we converted to pass-fail on Step 1, and you can think about that as like converting to you ran the 100-meter race and you just finished, that's not valuable for us to know if you just finished the race. It's valuable for us to know how fast you finished the race if we're trying to evaluate you to become an Olympic runner. And so when we look at this, 250 seems to be kind of the critical threshold to achieve better than that score on Step 2, because that's where we start to see higher rates of matches. When you're in this in-between zone, this 240 to 249, there is a small but not insignificant decreased chance of matching. And if you are less than 240 on Step 2, you have very low odds of matching. And so that's a time where if that applies to you, you need to be thinking very hard about your alternative strategies. And it's not just a test that we give to people because we want to be snobby, and it's not just a test that we give to people because we think, we want to embrace biases and perpetuate them. There is actually clinical relevance for this exam, and what we have seen in studies is that the Step 2 score actually correlates to performance on in-training exams for general surgery and orthopedic surgery. It correlates to performance on internal medicine services, and it actually seems to correlate with the in-service exam in plastic surgery as well as have some predictors for boards pass rates. And so it is a useful test. It's not just something that we're doing to be mean. So the summary for me from this data-driven portion is that there is some subjective data, which is very important, and that includes things like your letters of recommendation and your away rotations. There are also some objective pieces of data which are important, which are Step 2, which has increased rate, and we need to aim to be above a 250 on that to really be a competitive applicant. We know that research is helpful because we've seen that in our law of diminishing returns publications. We know that it's especially helpful if we're aiming for a top-tier program, but it is also helpful if you have no home program because it then becomes a surrogate for mentorship and sponsorship from plastic surgeons who know you. The other thing that I need to say is that the first time to apply into plastic surgery is really your best shot. What we have seen is that the match rate for re-applicants is now about 50%. And so your best chance to do this is your first time. So if there are weaknesses that you and your mentors identify in your application, you need to fix those before you go into the match the first time, not try and hope to get through and then see about going through it a second time. Sorry for this little clicking here, y'all. All right, I'm going to turn this over to another program director, my dear friend, Dr. Phillips, who's going to give you some alternative perspectives and some guidance and counseling in this. And I will relinquish control.
All right, let's see, I think I have it.
Perfect.
All right, thank you, Dr. Leese. I appreciate it. All right, everybody. So I'm gonna just give some additional perspectives, some things that we should all be thinking about when we're applying and before we're applying to make sure that we have as successful of an application season as possible. So I'm gonna see if I can figure out the clicking and there we go. Okay, so like I said, I think the first thing we need to think about is why are we going into plastic surgery? What do we like? What do we like about medical school? Why do we go to medical school? Is it plastic surgery the only option? Is that the only thing that's going to make you happy? You have to really think about that before you decide exactly where you want to go. And then you have to actually critically assess yourself and self-reflect, look at all of your own data, look at your grades if you have grades, scores of some of the step scores, some honors or awards that you've had, research experiences. You need to think about all of this, and then you really need to say, do I have enough to be competitive for integrated plastic surgery, or should I consider applying to something else and going a different pathway, or should I consider dual applying and maybe applying to plastic surgery and something else? And if plastic surgery doesn't work out as far as the integrated pathway, I can set myself up for success going through a different route, which may ultimately lead back to plastic surgery or may not. So I think you have to, when you're making that decision, you have to say, how risk adverse are you? Are you willing to take the chance and maybe apply to 20 programs or 30 programs and maybe get 5 interviews and 6 interviews? And is that going to be enough? And you have to kind of play some of these scenarios out in your head and say, is that going to be okay? Or would I rather dual apply and have other options in case the integrated pathway is not the way for you, at least the first time? So you need to be able to speak to your advisors, to your medical school deans, to program leadership if you have a program, either independent or integrated at your home institution. I think you really need to speak with people that have gone through this or know about the application process in order to advise you properly based on what they know about you and what your CV or your resume says at this point. If you are going to plan to dual apply, you need to plan for separate letters of recommendation. You general surgery residency program directors and either ENT or other specialties that you may or may not apply to, they don't want to see that your primary application is for plastic surgery and that their specialty is your backup. Nobody wants to say that. Nobody wants to hear that. So you need to find a way to make it out as though general surgery or ENT, whatever it is not your backup, but rather an option that you've considered for a long time or have been interested in and would be happy doing, and not even mention necessarily plastic surgery. And the letter writers need to know that when they're giving you your letters for those programs, so you do not have this mixed reading or, like where they're thinking that you're just having them as a backup. So all of this involves a lot of strategy. Let's see, click again. So what are the other routes going into plastic surgery? So you can go through general surgery. General surgery can be a 5-year program, could be a 7-year program if you do research. And then you would follow that by doing independent plastic surgery. There are less programs that have independent plastic surgery at this point, but that is still a viable pathway. And that's actually the pathway that I went through. I did general surgery, then went into independent plastic surgery. So that is something that all of you can do. And honestly, you may, like, I didn't necessarily go into general surgery thinking I was going to do plastic surgery. I didn't find that out until I was in general surgery. There's a possibility you get into general surgery and you realize that something else really piqued your interest or you really like something else. So you do need to keep that in mind too. But that is a standard pathway of going through general surgery, then independent plastic surgery. The integrated plastic surgery route is about 6, 7 years, just depends if the program has a research requirement or an academic program that is an extra year or two. The other options, you could go into ENT residency. That can lead to head and neck microsurgery or reconstruction, which still does some similar things as plastic surgery with free tissue transfer and things like that. You can do facial cosmetic surgery through that route, which also is similar, at least cases and patient populations as plastic surgery. Or you can go through the independent plastics through ENT also. Orthopedics is even an option. You can go through orthopedics and come out and do plastic surgery independent also. So let's talk about what you can control. So what you can control is trying to market yourself and become a known entity. And that means making sure that program directors, faculty, residents at either your program or another program that you're affiliated with or are doing a research fellowship with or have to talk to at different meetings or things like that. You want them to know you exist. That means you need some time either at their journal clubs, at their grand rounds, visiting them, talking with these people throughout the early years of medical school. You want them to know who you are. I tell our medical students that are interested that they need to come to grand rounds, come to didactics, come to journal club, come to different events that we're having or hosting, just so people can see their face, just to make yourself a known entity. So I think that is very important. You need letters of recommendation from plastic surgeons that program directors and different faculty at academic institutions know or are aware of or trust. If Dr. Lease writes a recommendation for somebody, I'm going to trust her opinion and say whether this person is going to be good for our program or not. I'm going to read that letter a little bit more detailed and maybe even speak with Dr. Lease to talk to her about that applicant. So if we know the people and they're involved in different entities, societies, that is more important. Yes, it could be beneficial to have a letter from a non-plastic surgeon that you did research with or that knows you very, very well. That could be valuable, but honestly, it is more valuable, more helpful to hear from somebody in the plastic surgery field that can testify that you will be a good person on our team and at our institution. You're going to be a plastic surgeon that our program would be proud of training. Dr. Lee's talked about crushing step 2. Honestly, this might be the only score that you have on your entire application. A lot of medical schools have pass fail. They don't have AOA or gold humanism or other awards. It's really hard to separate anybody besides knowing what their school they're from, what letters they got, where they went for aways, and the step 2 is really the only thing. And it is a good predictor of how you will do on the in-service exam, which then proves how good you will do on the American Board of Plastic Surgery written exam. You need to choose your away rotations wisely. This is very, very important. You don't want to choose just the top 3 programs, go there, and that's it. I think that is a big mistake. You need to be strategic. You need to spread them out across the country if you're willing to go anywhere, or if you want to stay in a specific area, you need to spread them out in that area. They need to have they need to not necessarily be all top tier. They can be, just good, strong, middle of the road programs and things or programs that line up with what your application metrics are. And I think that is incredibly important. You really need to try to be humble and self-reflect and say, is this a program that I can match at? Maybe have one reach school, but you want to make sure that you're going to do aways at places that you will match at and you want to match at. This should not have to be said, but you have to complete your application on time. The earlier that it's done, the better. I know this is not necessarily that easy, and the dean's letter might not be out at this time, but if you don't have your full application in, we will miss stuff and it will be overlooked. I know one of the staff members discussed about you can always apply to more programs if you don't have interviews. That does not work actually in plastic surgery. You really can't do that. You have to apply to whatever you're going to apply to right away, because we run through all the applications at one time and download them all and look at them. Maybe they'll be update with a letter or something like that, but I have our group of applicants. I look at them, and most of the ones that we're looking at are, especially now with the 20 signals, are the ones that signaled us. So all those are important. You cannot just additionally apply in the future. So really make sure you have everything done, including your signal statements. As far as aways, like I said, you don't need hours and hours with the program director. There's associate and assistant program directors. There's other faculty. They're very important. The residents are key. You want to be friendly and have a good interactions and interpersonal relationships with the residents. That is very, very important. And aways are expensive. It costs a lot of money to go travel somebody for a month, stay there, travel, get a car, all those kind of things. It's going to take time. So it's going to take time and money, and you need to make sure that you really strategically plan how you're going to do this. You don't want to necessarily just waste money. You want to know that you can match there and you're going to do a good job. So that's, once again, strategic, where you want to go, and be realistic on your application. VSLO is the place that you are going to apply for aways. Each school has different times of when they accept visiting applications. So I think most of you already have gone through this and have applied. If you're applying this year, you've already done this, you have your aways kind of picked out, but this is the application process, and you need to follow all the guidelines in order to get your away rotations at the places that you want it to be. There are so many resources, and these are just some of them. These are some of the Instagram things. There's Instagram lives. There's all of our societies have different resources for you to utilize to be able to get some information about matching in plastics and learning about plastic surgery, so you have things to talk about when you interview. There's even a Google spreadsheet that has a lot of information specifically about programs and about what people have said after they rotate at these places. Once again, we talked about signaling wisely. This is critical. If you signal a place and you write a really good paragraph about why you want to go there and make a strong case of why WashU or Duke are the places that you need to be and why you want to be there, that will get your application read and give you a strong case to get your rotation, get your rotation if you're applying for a sub-I, and then also for your interview. So utilize that signal statement. Don't make it copy and paste off their website. Really try to find a way to put something in there that's personal and a reason why you want to go there that maybe you don't necessarily just see from the website. So don't copy and paste. Location and where you're from and stuff like that can be important, but it's not going to be the only thing that's going to get you in. So be careful with that. What if you don't have a home program? It is less likely if you don't have some kind of connection at that program, research fellowship or some kind of personal mentorship or something there. It's going to be harder for you to get into that place. You will have to rotate there or do a research fellowship. I think that is critical, and you want to become that known entity at those places. If you're an international graduate, same as above. I think there's lower odds. The match rate was 2.7% for IMG in 25, and for DO was 1%. And so these are lower odds of matching. So make sure you take this into account. What about backup plans? So that was plan A. What about B and C? This was a survey that looked at what if you apply to integrated match? What happens if you don't match? So in this, there's 15 people that didn't match. Some of them actually went through the SOAP process and got into an integrated PRS. I imagine this was due to new open spots, not necessarily unmatched, because there hasn't been an unmatched spot in a long time. So you can then, if that doesn't happen, then you can go into a prelim spot at general surgery, or you can dual apply, which is what we talked about, and you actually match into general surgery and not plastics. If you go into a prelim general surgery and you do that for a year, you can reapply or transfer, or you can match into a categorical position for general surgery, then go into an independent plastic surgery residency. You can transfer into integrateds, or reapply and rematch as a PGY1. There are a lot of different backup plans, and all of these could be in your strategy for getting into plastic surgery. There's a plan D. What happens if you don't match and you don't do the SOAP and you don't want to necessarily go into general surgery? You really have to be critical on why you didn't match. Is it because you weren't a node entity and didn't have enough research? Then maybe research fellowship is what you should do. If you did tons of research and you are a node entity, maybe there's something else going on and you really need to have a strong conversation with your advisors and your mentors. You then should talk to your dean about whether you should delay graduation or extend it, because there is a different match rate for people that have graduated medical school, and that match rate this year was 7%. So you have to really be strategic, because I do think you stay in as a fourth year medical student if you extend, and then you can do your away rotations again and you can apply again, and that would likely have a stronger match rate than if you graduate. So just some things before you start your application. You want to make sure your CV is updated. You need to reflect on some interests and values of yours. Organize your thoughts. Discuss this with other people. There's different worksheets you can work on. You should go over your experiences and prioritize them. Even list like your top experiences and things that you want to make sure that you get into your application. You need to develop what your list is going to be. Are you going to apply to 20 programs? You're going to apply to 45. You're going to apply all, 94. That you need to really consider this and think about your application and what you think, like where you think you will be, and like I said, be strategic about it. There are different databases also that will help with organizing thoughts about different programs. So there's individual program websites. You can look at missions and value statements on the websites. You can look at different trends at your medical school. You can talk to alumni from your medical school that went to plastic surgery, what they did, what their suggestions are. And then you can put your list together. Make sure you run this past your mentors and your advisors. Like I said, be very strategic with your signals. There's 20 signals this year. You want to make sure that you utilize them in the best way that'll make you successful. And I got to go back one. All right, that is not working. But anyway, for advisors, if there are any advisors on here, that these are some tips that AAMC has put out that you really should. I think the biggest one that I tell our advisors and deans is to talk to the clerkship director or the sub-I director for plastic surgery, even the program director, and ask them whether they feel that your student is a good applicant for plastic surgery and what some other options are. I think that's really my suggestion for that. There are definitely resources. The ACAPS is a big resource for everybody: program directors, students, residents, everything. So that will be a site that you really want to check out. And then there's residency match data available through NRMP. So I think that is it. And we are going to go through some questions, I believe.
That is correct. And I believe I will start the moderation here. Again, we will take some questions first that came at time of registration and move into any live questions that are left. I believe this first question is for Dr. Lees. How do you recommend navigating dual applying to other surgical subspecialties or just other specialties in general?
I think this is a really important topic, and there was a question that came through in the Q&A about this recently as well. So hopefully this kind of hits on that. This is something that's going to be tailored carefully with your mentor, depending on what other specialty you're applying into. You are going to have, just as Dr. Phillips said, separate letters of recommendation for that. You can't use the letters of recommendation from 3 plastic surgeons who say you want to be a plastic surgeon for the letters of recommendation applying into psychiatry. And so you're going to need to make sure that you are thinking ahead far enough to have cultivated relationships with people, identified mentors in that specialty, and have some separate letters that are going to really support your application into that space. You'll have to have a separate personal statement, and it's possible that you are going to have a CV that's full of plastic surgery research as you are applying into general surgery or something like this. And that may pose a question at some point in someone's mind, and you just need to think about what is a personally true answer for you, whether that's through your exploration of plastic surgery, you got exposed to surgical oncology, and that was something that became really interested to you, and you felt like it was better suited to who you were and what your interests were in life. You're going to have to come up with an answer that's true for you. And so I can't tell you what that answer is, but you need to spend some time thinking about it and identifying mentors in that space and identifying letter writers in that space.
Yeah, that's really great advice. It is exceedingly helpful to almost like have 2 separate applications ready to go as your interest is dual in multiple specialties. All right, let's move on to the next question, which I believe goes to Dr. Phillips. Which is one single soft skill that would be good to have for plastic surgery residency?
So for actual residency, like once you're in it, I think being a team player and understanding team dynamics and things like that is probably the best. If it's for, I also think that's relevant for an away rotator or a sub-I, but I really think you have to have a good level of social awareness and emotional intelligence. If you're in the OR and it's your first day and you were just, loud and talking nonstop and giggling and just, not asking appropriate questions, that's a huge red flag. So I really think you need to make sure you like just are aware and can read the room. And, we want people to talk and be present, and we want to know and understand your personality, and we want to enjoy that, but like you have to be able to read the room on when that's appropriate and not, and make the determination when you should do that. And I think that comes natural to a lot of people. It's hard to teach that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Phillips. Bouncing back over to Dr. Leese for this next one, and it's in regard to the new 2026 specialty specific questions. We've talked about the requirement, we've talked about what they look like, and that there's an application spreadsheet that they can kind of use that to draft. But what exactly are programs looking for in terms of looking at these responses and weighing them for selecting folks to interview?
I think this question really dovetails nicely with what Dr. Phillips just said about having some degree of emotional intelligence. And so as you read these questions, think about what programs are looking for. They're looking for the skill sets that Dr. Phillips just talked about. They're looking for your resilience, your emotional intelligence, your ability to connect with people, your ability to solve problems. And so, historically, there had been a question on some of the prior applications that was about what was the best feedback you'd ever gotten. And about half the candidates understood that question and answered, one time someone gave me hard feedback and this is how I grew and changed. And the other half of candidates were like, someone sometime told me that I was awesome. And it was very easy to discern like who the people who did not have emotional intelligence were. They were the ones that didn't understand that question. And so what I would just say is look at the question, think about what skill set they're, a plastic surgeon might need, and then try and answer the question in a way that demonstrates that you have either the resilience or professionalism or problem solving or team playership that question is asking. And they're going to be a different set of questions every year, but they're designed to assess who you are as a person and what your skill sets are as a person.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Leeson. I think that they're great questions, and it truly will be helpful to share insights from applicants there. This next question is bouncing back over to Dr. Phillips, and I feel like it's an opportunity to myth bust here. What is the best way to set up a rank list? I heard people who didn't match and their faculty said it was because of their rank list. What does that even mean? And what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so as far as someone not matching because of their rank list, that the order of your rank list really has nothing to do with whether you like how you ordered your list. The way the match works actually is meant to benefit the applicant, and the applicant will match at the best place that they can on their list, which then matches up with the program. So it's actually the benefit of the applicant, not the program. So it does not have anything to do with their rank list. Now, I will tell you though, if you interviewed at 15 places and you were like, well, I think I'm going to match no matter what, and I don't really want to go to 3 of those places, so I'm not going to rank them, and then you only rank 12 and then you didn't match, well, then yes, it's because of your rank list, because you decided that you would rather not match it at 3 places than go there. So that could be correct, but no, that's not just not the way it works. You need to put down the programs that you want to go to, in what order you want to go to them, and hopefully one of those places has you high enough on their list where there will be a match. So I think you have to, this is a little bit nuanced as far as somebody saying that, but it could be a bunch of different things.
Oh, absolutely. All right. So we're going to move back over into a question about letters of recommendation, and I want to tie it into a recent question that we received live as well. But let's talk about obtaining letters and submitting those to plastic surgery that came from a physician outside of plastic surgery. Is there value there, especially, for example, if somebody has a late away rotation in December and January, the invites are already out? What do we do in that situation?
I'm going to jump into this one.
Have at it.
All right. I think that letters of recommendation outside of surgery and plastics are not very helpful to your application. And the reason is that, just to use my Olympic sprinter analogy, it would be like getting an endorsement from someone who's a welder. That's great. You might be a nice person, but that person doesn't know what skill set is going to make you a good teammate or a good runner. And so those letters are not as useful to us. They also come from people that we don't know. And so just like Dr. Phillips was saying, it's very hard to weigh that person's assessment of you against what I know the veracity of that person's assessment of you is. And so the only time that I recommend that people have letters outside of plastic surgery is if they have some very significant experience, like they ran some NIH program, or there's some reason to have a letter from someone that can support something really interesting outside of the plastic surgery group that should be writing for them. I think for the late letter writers question that you were referencing, Cynthia, I think the letter writer deadline is, I think, the end of September. And since applications will have been reviewed and decisions made about interviews by November, I really don't think there's any need to try and get letters past that September deadline.
That's exceedingly valuable insight. Thank you so much, Dr. Elise and Dr. Phillips. Those are the ones that we have pre-prepared. We only have one remaining in the live chat. So good job to our panelists, and thank you. Oh, now we got a second one. But thank you guys. We have about 3 minutes left, so we will try and answer what we can before we conclude here in just a few moments. I want to hit the first one, which is about comparing honors on transcripts when schools have different types of processes for deciding the quintiles or quartiles for who gets honors or just high pass. How do programs handle the differences between schools?
I would just say you want honors, and I'm not going through every single one and looking at quintiles or quartiles. Like, honors is going to make you look better than if you don't have honors. That's easy as that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, let's talk about couples matching. Do you have any advice for folks that are trying to couples match, one in plastic surgery and one in another specialty?
I mean, that is a harder situation, just because we know the match statistics are hard, but it is certainly not unachievable. And in fact, there was a couple this last year where both couples, or both members of the couple, were applying into plastic surgery, and both of them matched at a very competitive program. I think just being upfront with your mentors, talking and engaging your mentors, especially your medical school dean and other people like that, your dean of students, early, so that they can help make sure that you are being very strategic about your away rotations and who your letter writers are, to give you both a very strong strong application, and then strategic about where your away rotations are. So you're starting to put your combined efforts into the same location, but totally doable. Just you need to be strategizing from the beginning.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think there's a couple more in the chat, but we have run out of time. So I will send this back to Kendra, but thank you everybody for joining, and a special thanks to Dr. Leese and Dr. Phillips for sharing their insights and advice with the community. Kendra.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Cynthia. And we will ask everyone to please give us your feedback on today's presentation by filling out the webinar evaluation that will pop up on your screen when the webinar ends. We recorded this session and we will email you when we post the archive. On behalf of the Association of American Medical Colleges, thank you to our speakers and, of course, all of today's participants. Have a wonderful day.